My name is Lauren, and I am delighted to welcome you to IMPROVATE's first International Innovation Forum. Joining us, though, are speakers from 13 countries and representatives from over 20 countries. Among them, world leaders, opinion shapers, medical and security experts, investors, and technology executives.
IMPROVATE derives from two words, improvement and innovation. And about a year and a half ago, we realized that there is an opportunity to create a platform that puts the money where the mouth is. And this platform hopefully will enable all of you to create business and strategic collaborations that will make the world better for everyone.
The talent is by far some of the most talented people here in this region. Silicon Valley wouldn't be Silicon Valley if it wasn't for, the innovative minds and the spark, the small community that's happening here in Tel Aviv.
I'm so proud to be with you, to be one of you, and all of us coming here together, being members of the IMPROVATE family. A family of joint values. A family that has a very special ambition and a goal to serve.
George Cheriyan is the CEO and Chief Medical Officer of the American Mission Hospital in Bahrain since 2009. He worked as a consultant neonatologist in the National Health Service in London before moving up to take a position as a consultant neonatologist at Saudi Aramco Healthcare. Please join me on stage for your presentation.
I'll start with two statements and finish off with two stories. The first statement is that wars have always been fought over resources and religion. The second statement I'd like to make is that peace can find itself between healthcare and poorly managed healthcare, and I'll come to that in a minute. The first story starts with this picture, painted by Luke Fills in 1891. This oil canvas painting lies at the Tate Gallery in London. And if you look carefully at this picture, you will see the physician, exactly as most physicians are today, but in the middle of a poor man's living room lies a girl near death's door, and a peasant family. The mother is behind, head on the table, and the father just looks at the scene, totally helpless. But what is striking about this image that feels true is that the connection between the physician and the hopelessness of the clinical state of the patient that he was looking after. Today, fast forward to 2020, this is what most physicians encountered in the intensive care units of many hospitals around the world, where patients with the best of technology could not be saved. And their loved ones were no longer in the room, but they were in some distant waiting room, and the physicians just had to connect them through a smartphone or a call to say that your loved one was dying. Actually, Fields drew this picture about the death of his own son that he had no control over, and yet what he did is to camouflage the pain that he felt. The child in this picture is a girl, and yet it was a 7-year-old son that died, and this picture resonates to a lot of physicians about what healthcare can be. Fast forward 120 years, and we talked about innovation, and all morning we heard of great innovative ideas, but innovation is not adopted, and the adoption is not diffused to the base of the pyramid, where real life happens. Then that innovation sticks at the top of the pyramid and does no one any good. And we know that in medicine because outstanding papers are published in reputed journals like the New England Journal of Medicine, in Nature, and it's there. The data is out there, and yet on an average, it takes 7 years for this data to be practiced at the bedside by the side of a patient. So there's a lag of 7 years between a great invention and by the practical use of that information to save lives. So this is the state of medicine. The question is, how are we going to change it? That brings me to the second story. And again, the date is critical. 1891, this painter was hung up at Tate. And in 1892, two missionaries from New Jersey decided that they had to find Abraham's lost son in Arabia, and they took this journey from all the way from New Jersey all the way down to the Arabian Gulf. They actually stopped in Basra, Iraq, for a couple of years, and they had to learn two things to make this journey successful. One, they had to learn Arabic, and the second thing they had to learn was they had to learn to ride a camel. That was the only mode of transport in the 1890s, and yet they did it. So, in 1892, they came to a small island kingdom called Bahrain, which in Arabic means two seas, the saltwater sea, and Bahrain is gifted with deep underwater springs that gives it fresh water. So that's where a small mission hospital started, and 120 years later, this hospital still exists and provides healthcare to the people of Bahrain and to the expats of Bahrain who live there. In those days, they provided healthcare to all of the GCC countries because there was no hospital in that part of the world. So, question I have is, if you had to redefine the delivery of healthcare, where would you start? And it's a question that pundits have been debating these days. What is the future of healthcare going to look like? And the problem is, each of you would give me an answer, but that answer comes from the context in which you are trying to define the problem. So what works perfectly at Mayo in Rochester, or what works perfectly at Hopkins in Maryland, is not going to work in Israel, nor is it going to work in Bahrain. The context is important. So what if the king of the country came to you and said, Dr. Cheriyan, I want you to create a hospital or a healthcare system that is truly futuristic. You have provided care for the people of Bahrain for 120 years, and we want to create something for the people of Bahrain for the next 100 years. How would you do it? And some of the things that I'm going to show you is what we are currently doing in Bahrain right now. And I think the next slide says it all. Now, the 8 rules I'm going to put up there is universal, whether you're providing care in Australia or whether you're providing care in Zimbabwe. Only thing, the context changes. And these are the 8 rules. Start with the end in mind. What is your end in mind in whatever you're trying to do? If you do not know what the end in mind is, whatever you do is a lot of waste. And healthcare is notorious for its waste in what we do. The second thing we have to do is, unlike how we designed healthcare in the past, we have to put the patient right in the center of healthcare. It's not good enough to say what we do is patient-centered care, but truly, do we consult with our patients of what they need to define healthcare? The third thing that healthcare is notoriously poor as is we only provide sick care. No one goes to a hospital unless you're sick. So we are pretty good at providing expensive sick care, but are pretty bad at providing preventative health care that keeps and preserves your health. Regenerative medicine is still too late because you allow something to degenerate before you try to regenerate it. What if we could, and I was looking at the Iron Dome presentation this morning, wow, the missiles are off and you can blast it before it even hits the land. What if medicine could do something like that? And at the end of the day, care has to be collaborative. There is nothing, no country on its own has the know-how of everything. So what if we could foster partnerships across the globe? And this is what the American Mission Hospital has done over the last 100 years. It brought 2 nations, United States of America and Arabia, together. And I'm glad to say, since the Abraham Accord was signed, a 3rd nation has been added to this. So we are triangulating and creating a healthcare system between Israel, United States, and Bahrain. So this is my definition of using healthcare to bring peace where there was division and suspicion. And I can't thank IMPROVATE enough to provide the platform where today's technology is being leveraged, and we're going to use the technology to do a lot of things different in medicine that we were notoriously bad at doing over the last 50 years. Healthcare has to be an ecosystem. One system has to support another system. And unlike fighter pilots or any other profession, healthcare is the most complex, multi-dimensional system that you can create and run. Finally, humanizing the digital experience is critically important. And we have to build for sustainability, scalability, quality, and affordability. The next few slides are some pictures, images of what we are now building in Bahrain to transform the healthcare experience for everyone, the rich and the poor. Unless healthcare is affordable to the poorest, the bottom of the pyramid, then what you're doing is not good enough. And these are actual images of what is being built. And this is the history of the hospital. We had the first women and children's hospital in 1926 in the GCC, and that's the whole history of our development. And that graph shows us the growth of the timeline. And that's our mission, vision, and values on which we build the ecosystem of healthcare. And this is our story in pictures from 1900 to 2018. And this is what, this is our last 10-year strategic plan on what we have done. This is a quote, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And we are creating this future in healthcare in Bahrain. And that's His Majesty the King looking at the model that we have created that we are now actively building. And that's how the hospital looks. And the last few images are just pictures for you to sort of sit back and see. This hospital will be opened in 12 months from today. Okay? Futuristic in design, it's a teaching hospital, just 125 beds. We're not building 400 and 800-bedded hospitals because there's no healthcare staff to staff such huge monoliths. It's green, lean, digital in everything that we do. And I always tell my staff, the only paper you will find in that hospital is paper cups and toilet paper. There's no other paper. That's just the footprint of the hospital. And you will see that there's a lot of green. A lot of green in that hospital. And we invested. And in order to preserve this green, we put 500 car parks under the ground so that we will not destroy the landscape for the people. There's a lot of glass. And this is special photochromic grass that has been imported from Switzerland, so that when the light is very hot in the Middle East, the shades become darker. That's the lobby of the hospital. That's the waiting room. That's the pediatric areas. And these are the various renderings of the hospital. This is affordable to everybody in Bahrain, not just for the rich. Nursing station. That's our auditorium. It'll seat 300 people. That's exactly how it was in October. And our operating rooms, hybrid, state-of-the-art. Palm trees are being planted as I speak. And thank you.
And that is it for IMPROVATE's Jerusalem 2021 International Innovation Forum. The forum is just the first step in creating collaborations between governments, businesses, and investors, and leading Israeli technology companies that were here today. The exposure right here at this conference is a first step. The next step, delegations and real-world business connections to promote IMPROVATE's vision of making technology accessible to all and improving the lives of people across the world. I would like to thank all of the wonderful speakers and panelists, the companies who presented the best of Israeli technologies, and all of you, of course, who were here with us today. A special thanks to two amazing women who made today's event possible, IMPROVATE's founder, Irina Nevzlin, and Ronit Hassin-Hochman, who together prove that nothing stands in the way of will. Thank you both so much for putting on today's important gathering. Happy Hanukkah, and we will see you guys at the concert tonight. Thank you.